I know, I felt so bad.
I wasn't. I had a vision, and that was like...
Okay. Finally, we are live. Is there something black here? There we go. We are live at Siftah for Coffee and Kabbalah, Parshas Vayera, right? Vayera, not Vayera. Parshas Vayera. Today's shiur is dedicated to our very, very dear friend, Bryna Astor. Bryna Astor. She came to the shiur, rain or shine. She took Mabel, her golf cart, to get here. She would drive an hour to get here every week, and she brought so much light, and she was always had something so warm and encouraging to say, even when she was going through her own challenges and her own struggles. She was always thinking about other people and how she can be there for them, and she, for me, was such a light and a warmth and like my bubby. I really felt like she's my bubby. I miss her so much. I can't believe it's been a year since she hasn't been here. She was such a present part and like vibrant and amazing part of like our lives, and I just like I still feel sad. I wish if I'd known her time was so short, I would have spent so much more time with her. She was an incredible, talented artist, baker, just a warm, amazing person, and she loved to learn and grow. And till the end, she was always open to like exploring new types of therapies and ideas and growing as a person. And she's such an inspiration. And we miss you, Bryna. Okay, so Parshas Vayera. The name of let's just recap. Noah, right, the flood. Last week was Lech Lecha, the beginning of Avram's journey from when he's 75 years old until he's 99 years old. Now we are in the aftermath. Vayera Hashem el Avram. The parsha begins with Hashem's revealing himself to Avram. Why is Hashem revealing himself to Avram? Because Avram is 3 days after having a circumcision at 99 years old, circumcising himself and all the males in his household. And Hashem says, okay, I'm going to come to you, reveal myself to you. And Avram is in the middle of talking to Hashem, and he has 3 guests come. Hashem made it so hot, the guests wouldn't come out. And Avram was so distraught, he was devastated. Where's my guest? That's who I was. That's who his whole life was. So Hashem sends 3 angels disguised as Arabs to come, and Avram welcomes them, and he says to Hashem, I'm sorry, I know this has been great talking to you, but I have guests now, and that's more important. And we learn here that having guests is even more important than the Shekhinah, comes before the Shekhinah itself. Welcome, Shelly, and welcome everyone who is with us in person and hopefully watching this recording if it works this week. And so honored that you're here. So the Parsha begins in the aftermath of Abraham's bris milah. I'll just do a short, it's a very, very dense Parsha with so much history and so many of the like core stories that we have. So I'll just briefly share them. Avram prepares the meals for the 3 angels who give him each angel has another mission. One is to tell them that in exactly 1 year, they're going to finally have their son, and Sarah laughs. The other one says that Hashem is coming to, the first one came to heal Avraham. That was Malach Raphael of Refuah. The Malach of Michael, I think, came to bless Avram with the son. And then the Malach of Gavriel of Gevurah came to tell Avram he's destroying Sodom. But Hashem, why does Avram care about Sodom? Because Hashem says, I promised this entire land to Avram, and now I have to destroy one city there. I have to tell you, this is why I'm destroying it. And Avram immediately fights with Hashem and argues with Hashem and says, let's save Sodom. And in the end, there's a long story, but then Lot and his children are saved. His wife looks back, she dies, and the Lot's daughters think, there's a terrible story where Lot's daughters think that they're the only ones left in the whole world because they saw the destruction, and they get him drunk and impregnate themselves through their father, and the 2 nations born from that are Moab and Ammon. We learned some deep Hasidic stuff from there. Then Avraham, again, the same story as last week. Avram goes now to Gerar, where the Plishti king Avimelech takes Sarah, who's still gorgeous, at 90 or 89 years old, to his palace, and Hashem warns Avimelech that unless he returns this woman to her husband, he again says she's my sister. There's a lot to go unpack there another time. And they make a peace treaty. So he returns, he says, okay, I won't touch her, take your wife back. And they have a peace treaty. And they have and then that's where Sarah davens for Avimelech. He also was barren, and it says someone who prays for someone else is answered first. And after Sarah davens for Avimelech, she is blessed and she becomes pregnant, and finally she gives birth at 90 and 100 years old to their son Yitzchak. And Yitzchak is circumcised at 8 days. Hagar and Yishmael are sent away because Yishmael is having a terrible influence on Yitzchak, teaching him how to hunt and kill. And in the desert, Hashem hears the cries of they were dying from thirst, and he saves their life and shows them a well.
Mistake.
What?
Big mistake.
Hashem's plan. And then finally, probably one of the most largest parts of our history, the Kedas Yitzchak, where Hashem tells, finally, after being blessed with a child at 100 years old, 40 years later, it seems, Hashem, around 30 or 40 years later, I think that's 40, Hashem now says, okay, now you have your son. He's not married yet, Yitzchak. Now you have to sacrifice him for Hashem. And there we have the Akedah, one of the most poignant moments in Jewish history, which we repeat all the time, which we'll dive into. So the name of the Parsha, that was 5 minutes. Good morning, everyone who's watching. The name of the Parsha, Vayera, means revelation. And something that I keep coming back to is like this. The name of the parsha tells us about the essence of the parsha. So, the name of this parsha is called Vayera, Revelation, Hashem appearing to Avraham, which teaches us about deep revelation. And of all parshas, this is a parsha that is the opposite, seems to be very far from revelation. It's a parsha where Avraham doesn't necessarily feel Hashem so much. His wife is taken. There's a lot of tests he goes through in this parsha. Sodom is killed. Sodom is destroyed. There's a lot of challenges and darkness in this week's parsha, and the darkest episode in Jewish history probably happens this week's parsha, where a father is told to sacrifice his child that he loves, which is such a challenging and puzzling thing. To call this parsha Revelation, you don't see necessarily Hashem revealed in this dark part of our history where Avram is told ultimately he didn't sacrifice his son. And so the question here is that what is truly revelation? And there's a beautiful story that depicts this, that we feel the story is, and I think I've shared this last year, and I could share you the video of it, and I watched it again this year. It is such a powerful story that this man, I forget his name, he shares the story that in the early 70s, he grew up, I think, in speaking Yiddish somehow, but he was totally secular. He was traveling with the Rolling Stones, and he had a lot of questions about life. Did you guys watch this video? He had a lot of questions about life, especially how could the Torah be right and the rest of the world be wrong? And it really bothered him, and he was full of questions. And he was plagued by these questions, and his friend told him the only person who can answer these questions is the Lubavitch Rebbe. He never heard of him. He said, go to 770, wait for him to come out after Mincha, and that's the only way you'll get to talk to him, because you have to make an appointment months in advance. And so he does so, and he says, picture him, he's wearing his snakeskin boots, tight leather jacket, long hair, and he's waiting for the Rebbe to come out. And someone comes out who thinks it's the Rebbe. He says, in Yiddish, bist du der Lubavitch Rebbe? And he says, yes. He says, I have to ask you a question. So he says, Freg. He says, I asked him in Yiddish. He said, the Rebbe, he's crying when he's sharing this. The Rebbe looked into his soul and he said, where is God? And the Rebbe said, everywhere, and everywhere you see, in every single thing. And he said, Chves, aber avu. He said, I know, but where? And the Rebbe again said, in the tree, in the sky, in this chair, inside every single place. And again, he kept saying, Ich weiß, aber wo, I know, but where? And
this guy knows Yiddish?
Yeah, he said Yiddish was his native tongue. And he said, again, the Rebbe said, Hashem is everywhere. And he said, I know, but where? And finally, the Rebbe looked into his soul, and he said to him, if inside of you, if this is how you're asking, in thine hearts, in your heart, if this is how you're asking. And what does this mean on a deeper level? That of course Hashem is in every place in the world. We see Hashem is everywhere, indirectly. Hashem is indirectly everywhere. We look, there's nowhere you look that you can't, if you look deep enough, find and see Hashem. In the moment a child is born, in life, in every blade of grass, in nature, in the foods, and the flavors. When you just look around the world, you can see Hashem's presence in every act of creation, in every cell in our bodies, in the way our bodies function. And if you look in the world, you see that there's a creator, and you can see the imprint that someone had to create this. There's an artist, there's a creator in this world. But sometimes in our life, it's not enough to just see Hashem indirectly and to see him in these hidden ways, or in these what's the word? Not imminent, but transcend, in these hidden ways. Sometimes in our lives, especially when we're going through challenges in our life and we feel distant, we want to have a real revelation. We want to feel Hashem tangibly. I want to feel Hashem talking to me. Like my children say, when Hashem comes, Mashiach's here. Mashiach's gonna come when we see Hashem. Where is Hashem? All the time. They know, yes, Hashem is everywhere. I know that, but I don't want to just know it. I want to see it. I want that revelation. I want to feel Hashem answering me, guiding me. And it's hard to see Hashem in the hiddenness in all of the world. And so a lot of times we demand a clear guidance from Hashem. And this is the famous story I grew up with as a child in the Hayom Yom, the Hasidic story, that the 5th Chabad Rebbe, when he was a child, cried to his grandfather. His name was the Rebbe Rashab, Reb Shalom Ber. He cried to his grandfather, Menachem Mendel, the 3rd Chabad Rebbe, and he said, why did Hashem appear to Avram and not to me? It's not fair. I want Hashem to appear to me. Yes, Hashem is everywhere, but why can't Hashem talk to me like he talked to Avram Avinu? Right? It's frustrating and it's difficult and it's painful to live in this world where, yes, okay, Hashem is everywhere, but where? I want to feel him inside of me as well. And so his grandfather answered him that when a Jew at 99 years old has a bris milah, he merits to have a revelation from Hashem. And that's what I always grew up with. But to me, when I was thinking about this deeper in this concept, I really realized that in this week's Parsha, specifically, Vayera is called Revelation in the Parsha of tremendous challenges that increased. Avram's challenges began with leaving your house, right? They got harder and harder. Leave your land, move somewhere new. Okay, that's a challenge. Then give 10% of everything he owned to Hashem. That's sacrificing of himself. Then it's giving a piece of his body, of his flesh, to Hashem at a circumcision. And then it just gets harder from there. Then take your child Yishmael and send him away. Avram didn't want to. He fought that. Send away your beloved, your son Yishmael. Then finally I give you another child, the ultimate sacrifice. The sacrifices get more and more of how much Avram has to sacrifice. The ultimate highest sacrifice is giving over the entire life of his entire child that he waited for his whole life, his future, his legacy in this world. He's giving up everything, his entire essence, his entire being. And to call the Parsha Vayera, we learn something so deep about life, that true revelation of Hashem. That's to me what the Rebbe was telling his grandson, that when you really feel Hashem, what is true revelation of Hashem in your life? It's not in the moments when life is, going good and everything is perfect. It's specifically when we face the deepest challenges in our life that we discover true revelation. It's specifically when a Jew at 99 years old gives up a piece of himself, has this challenge, finds this dark space, and somehow can still feel Hashem and find Hashem in that darkest place. And I mentioned this last week, I know, but we see this now. That's never been so relevant, when the hostages coming out of the darkest place in the world are coming out with more and more stories of light. It's unfathomable, and it's shocking. No one has not been touched by the stories of the hostages coming out and saying how they found light, they found connection to Hashem, to the extent that Omer Shem Tov said that he misses the feeling and the connection he had to Hashem in the tunnels. He's literally saying what it means. Vayera is revelation in the darkest places, that he felt closer to Hashem present inside of him, not when he was living his greatest, best life, when everything was just a party, but when he was partying, but after, when he was in the darkest space, he was able to come out and say that there I actually felt Hashem with me in such a present way that I missed that closeness of just talking to Hashem every night. And even though he does it still, he's it's not the same as when we're in our struggles. And now we're going to explore what that means and how we do that, because it's easier said than done. It's not that simple. And we see hostage after hostage coming out and sharing the light that they came out with and the connection that they came out with, like the hostage who put on tefillin with the entire Tel Aviv in hostage square. And saying that his deepest desire in that dark space was not why Hashem did you abandon me, but it's I felt my desire to just feel Hashem through tefillin. This guy with the story with the Rebbe, he says that he was crying and he asked the Rebbe a lot of questions about life and why life has to be. He had a 15-minute conversation afterwards. He said, is it true that the same Hashem is within a black man, an Indian man, and a Jewish man? And the Rebbe said that the black man's job in this world is to be the essence of who he's meant to be, and the Indian man's job is to be the essence of who he is meant to be in this world, and a Jew's job is to be the essence of who he is meant to be in this world, which is the connection to the Ein Sof within him, to the infinity inside, to the Shem and piece of Hashem inside of him. And he said for some reason that touched him. The Rebbe gave him takeaways. He said to put on tefillin every day and to learn Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, and they spoke for a long time, and this transformed his whole life. He just felt finally I feel Hashem inside of me through the darkness. And so because when life is so dark, how do we feel Hashem in those moments? How do we get through the darkest challenges in our life? How do we overcome the darkest moments when Hashem sends us things that aren't positive, that aren't light? And how do we, as a nation as well, cope with the darkness that we've experienced over and over and over throughout history, the darkest times? So to me, the answer of how we deal with the darkness and challenges in our lives as a nation, as individuals, is when we say Hineni. And that's why in this week's Parsha, throughout the challenges and the Kedah, you see this really unusual repetition of this word, which is the first time we see this word in the Torah, which is Hineni, which seems a little bit redundant. The first time, if you look at the last source, Bereshis, Perek Chaf Beis, when Hashem, the first beginning of the Kedah, we say this every day in davening, Vayehi achar dvar me'ela ve'lahim nisa es Avraham, Vayomer love Avraham, Vayomer Hineni, right? We could have skipped that part. We could have just said, Hashem tes Avraham, Vayomer love Avraham, and he said, take your son, Kach nas bencha. But this interaction, this exchange of Hashem saying to Avram, he says, Avraham, and Avram says, Hineni, which means, here I am. The second time we see it, and the Medrash brings down, is 10 psukim later, before this, 4 psukim later, when Yitzchak and Avram are walking in Pasuk 6 psukim later, in Bereshis Chaf Beis Pasuk Zayin, Vayomer Yitzchak el Avraham Aviv. They're walking together to the Kedah, and Yitzchak says to his father Avram, Vayomer Avi, says father. Again, Hashem said Avram, he said Hineni, he says father. Vayomer Hineni, and he answers him, Hineni, here I am, Hineni B'ni. Vayomer Hina Eish Ve'etzav V'ayisel El B'ni, says, here is the wood, but where is the sacrifice? And what does he answer? And famously he says, Hashem will show us the sacrifice. That's not our job to figure out. And then the third time is 4 psukim later that they finally get there, and Avram is about to commit the unthinkable act. Vayikre lav malach Hashem min hashamayim, and an angel calls from heaven, Vayomer Avraham Avraham, and he says, Avraham again, Avraham, Vayomer Hineni, and again he says, here I am. And he says, what's this message of this a word that comes up in the Torah, and could, in all these circumstances, it could have been skipped. It could have just said, Vayomer Avram, here, stop, don't touch the boy, right? This Hineni is telling us, maybe to me, the deepest secret of how we can feel Hashem and find Hashem and the revelation somehow, not just despite the darkest times, but only and specifically through the darkest times. That in each of these cases, what Hineni is this full surrender. In the song, in Leonard Cohen's song, he says, Hineni, I'm ready, my Lord. He says that he was surrendering and ready for whatever Hashem has in store for him. And so to me, the switch is when we say Hineni and I fully surrender to whatever it is Hashem is guiding me through and putting me through and sending me. That's when I can tap into the real revelation in this moment. And we actually learn, the Ramban teaches us that what is the point of nisyono, of these challenges, of tests in general? And we learn this from Avraham Avinu. A nes, a nisayon, when we test our child, when we test our kids, or as a teacher, if we test our children, it's not to punish them. We test them to draw out their potential, to help them remember better, to strengthen their mind, to sharpen their mind, or even more, to showcase. Let's say I ask my kids questions, my husband asks the kids questions at the Shabbos table. Why are we asking them questions out loud? We want to show how smart they are. We want to show them how much they learned. We want to show how clever they are. We want to showcase. That's why the root word of nisayon is nes v'degel. A nes is a banner. We want to showcase and highlight the growth and the potential that's dormant. And so the Ramban says that who's the challenge for? The nisayon. It's not for Hashem, because Hashem already knows that who's going to pass it. It's not for the Rishaim, because Hashem, it says, doesn't test. It says Hashem tests only the tzaddikim, who he knows is going to pass. We don't test our children if we know they're going to fail. We don't ask them a question to trip them up that they don't know the answer to. What do we look for? I look for a question that I know is on their level, that will pull out of them something that I know is in their potential that's dormant. And I don't ask a kid a question just to stumble him and to show how stupid he is. Even in teaching, like when you give a child a test, if you know the child in your class can't pass the test, my mom's teacher, you give them a modified test. We want them to succeed. We want them to pull out their potential. We want them to push themselves a little bit more and study and push themselves to pull out more potential. So the Ramban says, who is the test for? It's not for Hashem, because Hashem knows what you're capable of and who you're going to pass. And it's not for other people, specifically in the Kedah, in the sacrifice. No one else would have known. If Avram passed or not, no one would have known if Avram had passed, because the only witness, he left the servants there, the only witness would have been not alive anymore, was Yitzchak. And so only Avram would have known. So the Ramban says that the test is always for the individual who's receiving the test. As hard as it is to think about it, when Hashem tests us, it's never, God forbid, to punish us or to put us in a dark place. It's because Hashem knows that in this individual is so much depth of potential that is untapped, like lechacha me'artzacha. How does Hashem truly get us lechacha? We said to your highest self. Last week we spoke about how there's so much more potential in you that you even are not even aware of. That Hashem says, El ha'aretz asher arecha. We're going to get to the comparisons between the words lachacha, el ha'aretz arecha, and Hashem saying kachna spincha etzichitcha asher hafta etz Yitzchak v'lech el makam asher arecha. Again, to the land that I will take you to. In both of these places, right? Dora, you want to look up the exact words of that pasuk, kachna. When Hashem tells Avram the Kedah, we see almost the exact verbiage used in Parshas Lechacha, where both, and this teaches us something so deep. In Lechacha it says 3 times, 3 redundancies, seemingly redundancies. Lechacha, go to your highest potential. Me'artzacha, right? We spoke about this last week's year. Mimoladetecha, mi besavicha, from 3 places. To go, elamakam asharecha, it's the place that I will show you, the unknown. You have to surrender to Hashem in that space. The way you get to your highest self is by surrendering and letting Hashem take you to the space that He will reveal in you that's way higher than you ever thought that you were capable of. And in this week's Parsha, it's the exact same thing. Hashem is giving him this nisayon, and He's saying, Kachna, please take. This is by the way, Lechacha was the first test of Abraham. Yeah, want to read it to me? Tell me the last 4 words. Kachna, it's bincha, es yichitcha.
It says,
I think it's Ella. Yeah, et Yitzchak. Echad harim asher amar elecha. So we have this at the end of the pasuk. He says, "Take him to Haramiyah." I'm not going to tell you which mountain. It's going to be the one that I tell you. In both of these cases, we learn that the first test and the last test, there's so many juxtapositions. We have this like Hashem both times guiding Avraham and saying you have to surrender. In both of these cases, that for the same way that Lechacha was to reach for Lecha was for you reaching your highest potential. This Nisayon, again, the saying take your son, which one that you love, Yitzchak, instead of just saying take Yitzchak, right, to begin with. There's so many mafarshim that explain that, but for this case, we'll explore it a little bit more soon. But in this case, in both situations, it's to the land that I will show in you, to the Ela Har Asher Amar Lecha. Asher Amar Lecha. To one of the mountains that I will show you. Again, it's for you to reach your Har. This is the Nisayon for you, is not for anyone else other than for you to get to your mountain, to get to your highest potential. This Nisayon, just like every other Nisayon until now, is for me to take you to the mountain that I will show in you, to the highest level of yourself. And so every Nisayon in our life, every time Hashem sends a challenge, this is one of the ways we get to our highest potential, is because Hashem sees that there's more potential in you. And the only way to get potential out of a person, the way Hashem designed the world, is through squeezing them. And we see this over and over again in nature. Jewish people are compared to a zayit, an olive. The way to get the light, the oil that produces the most beautiful light out of an olive could spend its whole life not knowing how much light it could produce. How does the light come out of an olive? By squeezing it. And so it might be like, why are you squeezing me? Leave me alone. Like we can look at the Nisayon and either say, leave me alone, don't squeeze me, just let me live my life. And we're like, but wait a minute, there's so much light inside of you. You don't even know how much you could shine. Hanukkah's coming up. How could you shine unless you're squeezed? The squeezing is not, God forbid, to hurt you. The squeezing is because I see the light inside of you and I'm pulling it out. And when we're squeezed and we go through these challenges, the pasuk that reflects this the most is Mina Meitzal Karatika Anani B'Merchavia. That Hashem says from the Meitzar, from the straits, Karatika, when we could call out to Hashem and say Hineni in our narrow places. Literally, I think about the tunnels when I think about this. And when they describe the narrowness of the tunnels, Anani B'Merchavka, Hashem responds with Merchav and with revelation. And the only way to achieve this revelation is to draw out the immense potential can only be drawn out when something is squeezed. When we squeeze out the potential, mamash, when it's put into a meitzar, the only intention for that, for Hashem putting us through these nisyono and through these challenges and Avram's increasing challenges, is because Hashem says there's more in you, lechacha, you still have more inside of you, we're not done. And the moment we got all the oil out of the olive, it's done, we don't squeeze it anymore. And so from Hashem's perspective, the reason for the Nisayon is to be a nace, to reveal. To reveal the nace is to showcase and to reveal to you, not to everyone else, not to the other people in the world. I'm not trying to show everyone else how smart my kids are. I test and challenge my children for themselves. No one has to see their mark, right? It's for you to reveal inside of you and to draw out and to show you how great you can be. Omar Lecha, to the highest mountains that I will show you that you can reach. And finally, when you reach your highest self, there's no need for the nace. So that's from Hashem's perspective. That the Nisayon, what we said so far is that Vayera is means revelation. And when we actually counterintuitively see Hashem the most revealed in a real way, in not just in an outer way, but inside of us, when Hashem is revealed inside of us, the most is specifically in the challenges, and that's why Vayera is in the Parsha where Avram faces the most intense challenges of his life. The more intense the squeezing is, the more Hashem is pulling and revealing inside of us the godliness that we house inside of us, and the more it can be squeezed. And now for us, from Hashem's perspective, how do we draw out this potential? And the answer is Hineni. That 3 times we see the word Hineni. For me, that's the answer. When we surrender to this, as long as I'm fighting the challenge, as long as I'm resisting it, or like I always say, my first reaction to every time there's a darkness is, how do I make this stop? How do I make this, why is this happening to me? It's not fair. And then strategizing, how do I make this challenge go away, right? How do I end this as fast as possible? And it's like, well, I'm not gonna, like, the mashal thing is like, I'm gonna keep squeezing you until we get out the oil. And if you're resisting to the light that's gonna come out, the squeezing is gonna take longer. But Hashem is like, wait, this is a good thing. This is not a negative thing. I'm pushing you into a space to pull out of you your highest potential. And so when I stop fighting the wave, and I surrender to the wave, when I stop resisting it and I surrender, suddenly the light can pour through me. And so Hineni is Avram's answer. The first thing he says when Hashem says, here's your final test, your biggest one, Avram, are you ready? He's like, Hineni, whatever it is you need to send through me. And then again, with Yitzhak, I'm going to speak about that soon, what that means, like with the conversation with Yitzhak. Again, with like it's getting more painful. Yitzhak is talking to him again. He says, Hineni, I don't know what you want from me, Hashem, but I know that you're only sending me this because there's something even greater good that you want to pull out of me. There's a greater light and revelation that needs to come through me. And because I know this, I'm stopping to ask. My question is no longer going to be, how do I make this stop? The whole narrative changes when I totally have Hineni and I just say, like, what is the revelation Hashem is trying to give me, right? What is the greatness Hashem is sending through me right now? What is the revelation I need to get to? What is the har I have to go to? What is the highest potential that Hashem is like, there's not enough, there's more inside of you, I need to pull it out? What is Hashem trying to squeeze out of me, inside of me? Where's the revelation that's going to come to this? And when I start asking that question, then usually when I could do that, which is very rare, but when I could finally shift the narrative and say, okay, keeps coming back in my life, like this keeps happening, this struggle, this challenge, there's obviously light here that has to come out. And when I start looking for that light, the challenge usually miraculously disappears. The minute, Abraham was ready to sacrifice and just surrendered and said, okay, Hashem, what's the light? As soon as he got the light he needed to get, which was, in this case, many different things, but one of the main, in another past year, and we discussed that one of the main things Hashem was trying to pull out of Avraham Avinu is that until now, one could have said that all of his tests were still serving Hashem with his own nature, that Avram was just naturally chesed, kindness, saying yes to everything, and loving Hashem and wanting to serve Hashem. So it was kind of like self-serving. It was serving Hashem with his own nature. And Hashem said, if you don't pass this one, then some might say that, yeah, you were just born that way. You were born a tzaddik. But here, Avraham, who epitomized chesed, who was the ish chesed, the epitome of chesed in this world, is being told to do the very opposite of his nature, to sacrifice his one love, his child. And he says, when you do that, I'm pulling out of you this potential to not just serve Hashem within your nature, but to completely defy, like we said, to leave his entire nature and to show that it was never about him. It was always just about even completely changing his entire essence and balancing out the midah of gvura. And he pulled out with him the gvura within his chesed, the ability to balance out the very opposite. For that was one of the things that Hashem was pulling out of Avram. There's many explanations for what had to be revealed in Avraham, but Chassidut says it was the balance of the gvura within the chesed, of boundaries and being able to do the very opposite of your nature when Hashem calls it for you, and not just serving Hashem when it's convenient, when it feels good, like, yeah, I like this, I enjoy this, I'll do this. When it's hard for me, I'll leave that to someone else. I'll stick to the mitzvos and to the things that I enjoy and the people that I enjoy. I'll invite guests as long as I like them and they're nice and enjoyable. But when it's a difficult guest or they're annoying, the only time it really counts is when you push yourself, when it is someone that you really don't like and you don't want to have around. Not swallowing another fly. The only time that it really, really matters, what really matters is those times when it's not fun, when it's not convenient, those moments where it wasn't easy and I pushed myself. Those are the moments that count in the most in the long run. And so Avram was proving that with that. So that was just a tangent to understand maybe what Hashem on one level was pulling out and revealing inside of Avraham, that showed that everything he did until now was also not just because it's fun and I enjoy it and I love it and not just what makes me feel good. It was always about something way greater than himself and submitting to something higher. And so, in short, when do I truly see and feel Hashem in my life? When is the true, deepest revelation? When I could surrender to whatever it is that Hashem is trying to send through me. And that's when I reveal Hashem, that's when I reveal Hashem. Where is revelation? True revelation, the Vayera. True revelation is when Hashem is revealed through me, when I can pull out of myself the infinite godliness that I house, specifically through challenges, and specifically when I stop fighting and when I just surrender and say, Hashem, this is for my good. There's something great you want to send me here. What is it? Let me figure it out. It's not easy. It's really challenging. It's easier said than done. It's easier to say to someone else than to say to yourself. But when we surrender in those moments and we mamash just say, Hineni Hashem, okay, clearly you want something from me and I know it's for my good and I know it's to reveal more light and I know I'm going to get more light through this. At that moment, Hashem is able to be revealed through me and I the suffering, at least the suffering, it might still have the challenge, but the suffering part of resisting and fighting it is less. It's like birth, right? When we resist the contractions, they're the most painful. When I did hypnosis in one of my births and I was able to just like welcome every contraction as getting me closer to my birth, it was magic. It was literally, it hurt, but there was no suffering. The suffering is the resisting of the pain, is the fighting the pain. You might have challenges and pain, but you won't suffer as much. This, when we fight it and we resist it and we battle it, when we just surrender to it and say, okay, this is so another place we see this as women, specifically as women, but all Jews, is in the mikvah. And I know I've shared this in my Taras Mishpacha classes, but mikvah is a kind of a portal for every giant transformation in life. The mikvah is this portal that like takes us in these transitions into total transformation. When a non-Jew becomes a Jew, when something tameh or someone tameh becomes tahor, when Anita becomes torah, in this transformative state from single to married, from when a woman gives birth, she goes to the mikvah, and when someone passes on into the higher world, they go through the mikvah. They take the body and they put it through Tara and the mikvah as well. And so what is this idea of mikvah? Mikvah is tevilah, and the words of tevilah are bitul, which is total surrender, which we learn here that every transformation in life requires first a total surrender. That before you can ascend, and we learn this from a seed, that Hashem made the world in a way that if for a seed to transform into a tree or into a plant or into whatever it's meant to be, it first has to totally disintegrate and surrender and fall apart and lose itself. It has to become batal, it has to become nothing. And so we step down into the mikvah as a way of total bittul, of tevilah, of total surrender, before I can become the next level of highest transformation I need to be. First, I need to go down, and that's what we do in the mikvah. My meditation in the mikvah, as much as I can, is to surrender. And what I teach, like one of my thoughts is that I'm being bittul, tevilah. I'm saying the words of tevilah, and I'm letting Hashem carry me, like back in the womb. The mikvah represents going back into the womb of Hashem, as we were in the world that was in Hashem's womb, surrounded by water, before Hashem divided the waters, before the world was submerged in water, right, like it was in the Teva. Hashem, we're reminding ourselves that Hashem is carrying me. I'm tamid b'yadayim shel Hashem. I'm always in Hashem's hands. And I surrender and I relinquish that control, because for me, like my false sense of control, that I need to control every detail of my life, that I need to figure it out, that I need to figure out my parnasa and my life and all the details of my life, is like ridiculous to Hashem. Hashem is like that, like I'm carrying you. Why I'm lifting you already. Why are you carrying all these weight that I'm already holding? It's redundant. Let go. Put your bags down. I'm lifting you anyways. I'm taking care of it, right? Like I always think that Hashem says to us, like the results and the outcome of that's Hashem's business to take care of. How we're going to have our parnasa, where we're going to live, who we're going to marry, the children we're going to have. All of that is for Hashem to take care of. You don't have to worry about that. Let Hashem worry about that. We just need to worry about Hineni, about in the moment, showing up, surrendering, letting Hashem hold us, showing up the most that I can in the moment, and trying my best to figure out what it is I need to grow, how I need to grow through this challenge. But the plan Hashem has for me, if Hashem, like Leonard Cohen says, if you want it darker, if Hashem, we surrender to that. If you're taking us into this darkness, there must be light I need to come through. But surrendering that control and letting go of it is the ability for Hashem to carry you. That's the necessary stage of mikvah, where you have to step down, be lifted by Hashem, surrender all control, surrender any feelings like that politicians are controlling what's happening in the world now, that like false illusion, the politicians control nothing. Hashem is running the world. Nothing in the world is going to happen without Hashem. That's just another way for us to have free choice, another covering up of Hashem's, Hashem sends His light through so many channels. Hashem will send what needs to happen. The politicians are mamash puppets, there to give us free choice, and our choice now is to show up and say, Hashem runs the world. Nothing will happen without Hashem's instruction, and to fully relinquish that control. And so there has to be a state of, for any aliyah or any transformation that we go through, we learn from the mikvah that first there's a state of surrender that needs to happen, a bittul. I need to first relinquish who I was before, and the control and the sense of control that I had, surrender, germinate like a seed, be ready to disintegrate, and let Hashem take apart who I thought I was, right? Like last week we said, we have to stop putting myself in the boxes that I put myself into, thinking that my life is going to be a certain way, that I can only be this way. I get so stuck, and then I can't relinquish and surrender to where Hashem wants to take me to. Hashem's like, I'm trying to transform you, but you just want to stay a seed. You won't become a tree because you're clinging and you won't disintegrate. Let everything fall apart for a minute. Be bittul, surrender, so I can make you into the beautiful giant tree that you need to be. And it's very difficult. And so our only job is Hineni. Our only job in these moments of this challenge, Avram has nothing to do other than surrender and let Hashem figure it out. He's like, and his son even asks me, he says, who's gonna be the sacrifice? He's like, that's not our problem right now, right? That's Hashem's problem. He literally says, Hashem yirla solobani. That is totally Hashem's problem. How this is going to work out, the outcome, how we're going to get out of these tunnels, how we're going to get out of this crazy politician and that crazy politician and the anti-Semitism, that's for Hashem. Hashem yirlo hasela olbani. Hashem will figure out all of that. That's not our problem. What can we do? He says, Hineni, I'm here. We're going to show up the best we can, surrender, try and uncover as much light as I can while I'm here, try and be present in the beauty and search for the beauty in this moment. And the act of surrender itself is so difficult. It's an active role. Bittul takes so much more. It's like I wake up every day carrying the weight of what I believe I'm carrying. And the hardest thing is just to let go of that and say, Hashem, Taimid Bayadayim Shel Borei Olam, like somehow the mom whose son was in the tunnels, she was able to access that surrender because you need to, right? And that light that like I wish I could access every day. I wish I could wake up with her, even a percentage of her emunah, to know that Hashem is running everything. Let me just surrender and show up today the best that I can, be present through whatever it is Hashem sends through me, and let Hashem shine His revelation through me. So where is Vayera? Where is revelation in short? To me, it's in the darkest places when we invite Hashem into those places, when I surrender and invite Hashem and to reveal Himself through me. That is the truest Vayera that we have in this world, inside of ourselves, revealing through us. And it continues, this word Hineni, with one of the deepest teachings about parenting possible, that the first conversation between a father and child that ever appears in the Torah is now. When Avraham is walking with his child to sacrifice him. Mm-hmm. It's the first time you see that in the Torah, the conversation, right? I can't imagine, maybe Lot and his daughters, do they talk? I don't think it says the conversation. And so what is this conversation? This teaches us about what parenting, the core and the most important message you can ever learn about parenting our children, our inner child, even if our children are older. This applies to every single level. This is back to the pasuk Bereshis Chaf Beis Zayin. Vayomer Yitzchak. They're walking together. This is the first question a child has for the very first Jewish father, first parent, not just fatherhood but parenthood. Vayomer Yitzchak el Avraham Aviv. And if Yitzchak says to Avraham, and it makes sure to add, we know who Avraham is, but the Torah says his father. This is what fatherhood is. This is what parenting is, right? Torah adds that word. Vayomer Avi. And what does he say? This conversation seems completely redundant. Vayomer Avi, and he says father. And what does he answer? Vayomer Hineni b'ni, here I am, my son. And then he says, Vayomer Hine ha'eshim. So that part is important. He's saying, Yitzchak says to it, it could have been said, Vayomer Yitzchak el Avraham, Hine ha'esh v'etzem v'ayasel b'ni. The whole part beforehand seems to be fully redundant, to say Avram, who's father, who we know, and then he says, father, and then he says Hineni b'ni, and then he asks this question. It's just like, get to the point. The Torah is very concise in its words. And we learn that this is actually the deepest, most powerful, important teaching in parenting that's possible. That the number one thing a child wants from his parent is you. He says, Father, where are you? They're walking. Clearly, Avraham was very, very preoccupied with whatever thoughts he has, knowing that he's about to do what he's meant to do and like just going through this. Maybe even he's a tzaddik and he's like, okay, I'm finally fulfilling the one thing, whatever's going through his head. Yitzchak is sensing, he's an adult and he's sensing my father is somewhere else. What does he say? What do you mean he's saying, Vayomer Avi? What's he saying? But Avi, my father? He's saying, where are you? You're not with me. All I want in this moment, what can I do in this moment, right? Like, there's nothing we can do. Sometimes, I'll get this, but V'yomer, and what does Avram answer? Hineni b'ni. He gives him the number one thing that a parent could give their child, which is, I'm here with you. I don't have all the answers. I don't know what's going to happen next. This is a very, very dark space we're in right now. I don't know what the answer is. Sometimes we go through, I know personally, so many mothers now and fathers going through tremendous challenges with their child where there is no answer, and they call me and I'm like, I wish I had even an idea of an answer for you for what you're going through with your child. The pain of little children, older children, Tsar Gidol Banim is really real. We go through tremendous, and sometimes many times we don't have the answer, and Avram doesn't have to give him an answer. He just has to say, whatever it is, I'm here with you in it. Hineni. And that's the biggest, most important thing that we can remember as parents. Sometimes we try so hard to be the perfect parents. We spend so much time, let's say, working to make enough money to give my kids the vacation that I think they need to have to feel like the vacation or the things that they want or the music lessons that I think they need. So I'm like so busy and I'm missing the whole point. I'm busy outside the house working so I can give them the life that I want them to have. But that's not what they need. That's what you think they need. What they really need is Avi, my father, my mother, to be with me. Hineni is my presence, that I'm here with you. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter where we are in the world. I can be, someone could be homeless and they have their parent more than a child who has everything in the world whose parent is never around with them. It's not where you are, it's who you're with. And this is not just like, this is the first conversation. Give your child the presence. And this is before technology was invented. And this was like so powerful. And now that technology exists and there's like literally like the whole world pulling us away every moment from our children. Like I wake up, I think every day with this guilt or shame, like this feeling of like, one of the things that weighs me down every day is the amount of time that my phone takes me away from my children. I think it's like in the back of my mind somewhere, weighing me down all the time of how much I wish like I grew up in the previous generation and I didn't have this challenge. We never had this challenge of being pulled away, and I think it really sits very deeply inside of me, this like every moment that I spend where God forbid my child thinks that my phone is more important to me than they are. It's like and then they believe, okay, phones must be the most important thing in the world. So when I'm an adult, that must be more important than God forbid. And it's the most dangerous thing we have. And so giving our child the ability to just sit with them, not to have the perfect home, I don't have to have the answers. I don't have to be the perfect mom. They would rather their mom, their parent that is not perfect, that messes up, that screams sometimes, that doesn't do everything perfectly, that makes mistakes and then apologizes for it, than another parent. They don't need the perfect parent, they need you with them. You don't have to be the perfect mom. And there is no such thing as a perfect mom. There is no parent that's able to always give their child every emotional need that they have. That's not possible. Sometimes we don't even know their child's emotional needs till they're older. But what we can do is show up, and when they suffer and we did mess up, we can apologize fully. Say, I'm so sorry. I wish I would have been there for you. I should have been there for you. I wish I could have been there for you every time you needed me. And I wish I was with you more. We don't have to give them perfection. We just have to give them our entire self. The last thing I'll share today is another teaching from Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, which questions this, like similar along these lines of like this entire, along the lines of surrender. The highest level of surrender comes to answer this really, really deep, crazy question that how could Avraham, whose name is Av, which means father, he is the first father figure, the parental figure, not once but twice sacrifice his own child. What is the Torah teaching us about parenthood? If first he sends away Yishmael and then he's ready to sacrifice Yitzchak, and we're supposed to be learning from Avram as our father, what do we learn from that? When the Torah denounces child sacrifice as one of the most abominable things you could do, yet here Hashem is asking Avram to sacrifice his child. And it's so puzzling and it's so shocking. And Rabbi Jonathan Sachs is such a radical teaching on this that I touched on last year as well. Right? I think I did that. He says that this is where we go back to the reflection of Lech Lecha, the similarity between the verbiage of Lech Lecha me'aretzcha moladetzecha mebeis avicha, and now the opposite. Avram's first test was leaving where? Beis avicha, your father's house. Emancipating. The first father is told to disconnect from your father. Leave your father's house, disconnect from your father, and now his last test is to disconnect from his child. Leave kachnas bincha and sacrifice him. There's this total like surrender of your connection to your father and connection to your child, which he says is too coincidental, too like crazy to be coincidental, and especially the wordage of it. So what is the like deeper message in Avram beginning his life by leaving his father's home and then ending his test, his final test or his greatest test, by surrendering his child to God and sacrificing, so to speak, his child? It seems like the opposite of what we would learn from a true parent, the first Jewish parent. The Avram means he was a great father. Avraham means he's Av Hamon Goyim, according to Rashi. Av Hamon Goyim, the father of everyone, the father. And so he says something so radical. He says on a national level, that in order for there to be a true connection to Hashem, he first had to, like we said last week, separate himself from his father's house, which was idol worship. And in those days, there was a very radical shift in that there was no individuals. There was just the father of the household, and he owned his wife and children. They were his property. There's like, he had the connection. Everyone had their own gods, the gods of their father, their ancestors. The father was the portal, and this was like all the way to Greek and Roman mythology. That's how they functioned. And their wife had no autonomy. Their child had no autonomy because their connection to the gods was through their father. And Avram had to fully break that. And the one of the revelations or the radical changes Avram made in the world was not just that there's one God, but that every person, not that there's monotheism, there's only one God, but also that every person has their own individual connection to Hashem. Like I always share, the Manis Friedman shared once when someone asked, what could they do about their adult daughter who is not so religious anymore? How could they make her come back? And Manis Friedman said that the great news is that Hashem has no grandchildren. And what this means is that your child, just like your connection to your child's grandparents is through you, but Hashem is your father, but he's also your child's father. He's not your child's grandfather. Her connection to Hashem, and as a child, we have two parts of our connection to Hashem. We start Shimon Astor by saying Elokei Avraham, the God of my fathers. We have the God of our fathers, like the Katzkurov says. We say Zek Elokei Avi, in everyday in davening, and Zek Keli Vanvehu Elokei Avi Varamenu. The Elokei Avi is a Romanu, it's distant from me. We start off in that way, but then we have an even deeper connection to Hashem. That Hashem is not just the God of my fathers. There's me and my own connection to Hashem. I have my own relationship with Hashem, where he's not my grandfather through my parents, but he's me and Hashem, and it's our business. And therefore he says, your job is to influence your child, to give them Elokei Avi, to show them your God, and then for them to also have their own connection to Hashem. And that's not your business. That's between her and Hashem. You're not even related through that. And that's a surrender that's very, very hard to accomplish, that Avraham gave into this world through these two ways. First, he had to fully emancipate himself from his father's house and fully disconnect, say, I'm my own person. Just because you serve idols, I don't have to serve idols. I have my own God that I'm going to serve, my own connection to Hashem. And wives suddenly did this radical thing where your wife Sarah has her own connection to Hashem that's not through you. She's not your property. You don't own her. Your child, you don't own them. But it wasn't unheard of until then. And because the parents had this ownership of their children, where I birthed them and I acquired my wife, therefore I could sacrifice. Child sacrifice came as a result of an ownership, a feeling of ownership of I own my child. And so the most radical shift had to happen. For this to happen, the first Avram had to leave his father's house, become an individual, and then learn the hardest thing in life, which is that as much as I feel like my child is an extension of me, he's absolutely not. And the first thing you do when a child is born for them to live their own life is cut the umbilical cord, cut the attachment to you. And we cut the first umbilical cord when they're born, but we have to, when they grow up and become adults, we have to cut continue, even as their childhood, we have to keep cutting the umbilical cord, because there's an invisible cord that makes us feel that my child is an extension of me. And I think I heard someone say it so wisely. He said, our children are not our nachas machines. And I think that's one of the most powerful lines I've ever heard. We really think that they are. Like, my child was here, I birthed them, I created them, they're a part of me, and they're here to give me nachas, for me to actualize all my dreams through them, for them to make me look good, for them to give me joy and nachas. And Hashem is like, no, the Kedah, according to this teaching, was so profound that Hashem says, you can't truly love your child. Take your son, Akachas bincha, your son, Asher Ahavta, that you love, you really love him, as Yechitcha, your only son, and give him over to me. Fully surrender him, fully cut that. You can never truly love your child as long as you think you own them. As long as you think that your child is an extension of you, you don't really love them. You only love them when you set them free, and you fully, the space allows you, the space between us is like that. I'll read you some verses from Rabbi Jonathan Sachs that he quoted from a book called The Greatest, which is on a book by Matthew Syed on how to create champions. And he says, letting go is the essential paradox of parenthood, right? You care, you nurture, you sacrifice, and as a mom, you literally birth and create, and then you watch them fly into the great unknown, often shouting what an awful parent you are on their way out, right? And how horrible you are, and telling you all the things that you did wrong when you gave them everything that they have. And he says you're going to experience the stomach clenching pain of separation, but you do it with a smile and a hug, aware. Anyways, that this separation allows for your true love to be able to truly love them, for you to really allow them to be their own person. And the Rebbe said this many times. The Rebbe said that when parents would hit their children, or he said that you would never hit someone else's kid. You think of your child as your kid, so you think you can hit them. But if you think of them, they're not your kid. They're Hashem's child. And so you would never hit them if you remember that they're not your child. And I thought that you never scream at someone else's children. or maybe like only in very specific, as much as you scream at your own children, because I think that they're me. They're like an extension of me. But if you remember that they're not yours, they're Hashem's creation, that at most Hashem is giving you to nurture, guide, and protect as a gift to you. But they have their own full independent life and existence that's not to serve you and to make you look good and feel good. And so as long as you think of them as your own kid, yes, you could hit them. But when you realize that you wouldn't hit someone else's kid, so you can't hit Hashem's kid, it fully changes everything. And so we need to have that full, that's again Hineni, that like, again here, Avram is saying like, you're not mine. Hashem says, and you want to love Yitzchak? And my husband points out something interesting, that after the Kedah, Yitzchak goes and gets married. When that like full separation exists, he's like, okay, let me go find you a wife. You could build your own life. And what's interesting, also fascinating, is that Yitzchak ended up being not an extension of Avram's chesed. Avram epitomized chesed, and Yitzchak epitomized the opposite. Yitzchak's whole essence of life was gvura. Yitzchak, it says, will embody the gvura, the very opposite. Right? So often we like imagine our children that they're going to want to grow up and be, this is like so classic, but we do this also. Like they're going to grow up and want to exemplify everything that I want them to and serve Hashem the way I want them to. And the same way that I had my own journey, and many of us found our own journey to our connection to Hashem, they're going to find their own journey, and it's so painful and it's so hard to surrender. But when we do that, we create space for connection. And the truth is that there is no, just going to end off with this, but that's how Hashem made the entire world. That there's the beginning of everything in life starts with separation. Hashem first created in Kabbalah, in order for the world to exist, there first had to be a tzimtzum, a surrender, where Hashem had to create a space and Hashem took up all the space, it says in Kabbalah. There was only God everywhere, and Hashem said, I need to move myself aside and make space for another to exist, and only then could the world be filled. And every part of creation of the world is separation. First, they're separating heavens and earth, separating day and night, and then separating the waters, putting in dry land. And when you create the separation and move aside the waters, you now have the space for life and for creation. I separate and open up space, right? We have to be open to create life. All of life begins when I move aside and I create this distance. Well, I think that this distance is going to make me far from you, but my true relationship with my child starts when I fully let them be their own person. That's when I really have a relationship with them. And it's really challenging. But even in a marriage as well, the same way any relationship begins with tzimtzum, in myself, my marriage, I might be physically married, but my real relationship only began for me when I was able to make a space for my husband to be so different than me. And like I spent the first few years trying to convince him to be more like me and to have my opinions and to want to be as adventurous as me and so many other things, to convince him that like he should be and want all the things that I want and to look at the world the way I look at him. And there's no relationship, because I'm just trying to make you an extension of me. I'm trying to just have you be me in in a masculine form. Mm-hmm. The true relationship begins when I make space for you to be who you are, as much as it's the opposite of everything I stand for, and your opinions are so different than mine, and you want such different things than me. When I create a space where you can exist fully, independently, and differently than me, that's when a relationship starts. And it's hard. It's like the opposite of what you think. I'm going to separate from you. You're going to be so far from me. You're going to be so different than me. Like, you're going to be the opposite of me. Yes, but that's when we can reconnect. And so all of the world is about distancing and cutting off. Like, you can only live as a child if I cut the umbilical cord, or you don't live. And it's so symbolic. You can only truly live in this world and relate if I can fully detach and surrender and cut that off. So, yeah, that's the letting go, he says. The Irish poet, I don't know what his name is, he says, to bless the space between us. The space that I create for you allows us to come together with so much more closeness and so much more depth. And then that falls back into the last, what we just said a second ago, which was that how, if I have to emancipate and relinquish full control of my child and say he's not my child, he's not my nachas machine, he's not for me to fill my dreams through, he's yours, Hashem. I'm just here to guide him and to cherish him and nurture him, or her. So what can I do? All I can do for my child is be hineni, really. And that's what, like Avram is saying, like, I don't even know what the answer is. You're in Hashem's hands. Hashem's gonna figure out the olah part, the sacrifice part. Like, I don't know. I really could, like, it makes parenting so much easier. All I can do is that even if I don't know the answers, even if you're going through hell and we're both going through hell together, I could be hineni, I could be present in this moment. I could I could show up 100% and be with you in whatever challenges there are, even if I don't have any of the answers. I could be as present through whatever it is that you're going through to the best of my ability. And I think we say this to ourselves as well. It's not just to our physical children, our offspring in this world. This is the message to ourselves as well, to fully relinquish that control. My body is also not mine, right? And that's like that Hashem, yeah, our body, the same way my child doesn't belong to me, my body, my life doesn't belong to me either. That's why I'm forbidden to harm myself. And I'm forbidden to take my own life, because it's not my life, it's not my body. And it's such a radical thing to say, that you're not, your body is literally lent to you by Hashem. It's a vessel to carry you through. You do not own it in any way. You're just here to take care of it, la'avda v'lashamra, to nurture it and to care for your body. And you have no right to touch it or harm it. And your life as well. Hashem is like, your challenges, your things that you are given, they're not, as much as you feel like they're yours, they're mine. I'm carrying it. You're just here to be hineni, to be present and to nurture and to care for and to be there as much as you can in those moments, to be present in those things. But at the end of the day, the same way I'm in charge of your body, I'm also in charge of your destiny, meaning the outcome. The outcome of what happens, like the ending to this, that's Hashem's plan. Who we're going to end up marrying, when we're going to get married, the timeline, the day you're going to get married, the day you're going to have a child, what's going to become of your life, what job you're going to have, where you're going to live, what degree you're going to have, what job you're going to end up happening. Those also don't belong to you. Those choices and decisions only belong to Hashem. And it's hard to think and emancipate or surrender. But what I can do is just be present in those, in whatever it is that's happening, and show up to the best that I can in the moment that I can. L'chaim, to being able to surrender, relinquish control to Hashem, to sacrifice, May we all ascend to our highest selves. May Hashem carry us and take care of us, and we feel that we're in Hashem's hands every minute of the day, and be able to feel that Hashem carrying us, and Hashem should carry us and reveal and finally bring the Vayera, the revelation, and stop the nisyonot. We had enough nisyonot and darkness, and show us the revelation on the other side. Thank you for joining.
Amen.
Yeah.
לידה קלה.